Well, hey, all you wiretappers out there, back here in the studio of Gangland Wire. I got an email. God, it might have been a year ago now. I'm just going back over old emails, and let's see, what was that guy's name? Kevin Cartett from Liverpool, England, and he was suggesting I do some stories on some different people over in Liverpool. I haven't really done anything outside the United States for a while, and there's organized crime everywhere, especially with narcotics. So let's talk. I did a little research, and there's a guy named Curtis Warren, born in 1963, and by 1969, whoops, correction on that. By 2009, he was listed as the number one target on Interpol's list of the most active European gangsters. Now, and he came from he's not a mob legacy as we see sometimes here in the United States. Curtis Warren was born to, his father was Curtis Aloysius Warren, who was a seaman in the Norwegian Merchant Navy, and was born in South America. Came from working class family, had a brother and a sister, and they grew up in Liverpool. One time, interesting, let's tell you a little bit about Mr. Warren here. At one time, he was released from a local jail, and a copper said, I think he's turned his life around. And he went out and he started working as a bouncer at Liverpool nightclubs. But it was here, after he got out of that little jail sentence for some kind of, hooligan kind of stuff, I'm not sure what it was, he learned about the drug trade because, bouncers control these hot clubs and cocaine dealers go in and out of there. That's where they find customers. They like to party themselves. It's a cocaine, especially back then when this guy got going, it was a party drug. I remember in the 70s, it was all about party, kind of a high-end party drug. Well, he got to know some of these dealers and befriended them, give them, let them beyond the velvet ribbon, if you will, or is that what they call it, beyond inside and jump the line. And they gave him education on that. So he started into the drug trade. And in the 1980s, when it was hopping and he had done a little personal sales, he fell in with a Middlesbrough businessman named Brian Charrington. By 1991, they used this Charrington's personal yacht. They sailed to France and then traveled to Venezuela on their British passports and had some connections by then with the Cali cartel. And they made an arrangement to start a big time smuggling operation directly from Colombia to Liverpool. And they were going to conceal the cocaine in lead ingots and pack those in steel boxes. I'm not, you couldn't penetrate those with any radar and see any funny things inside the lead ingots. There must have been a traffic anyhow. They must mine lead in Venezuela and South America and then bring that lead to Liverpool. When this first load got there, the Customs and Excise agents, they call them over there, Her Majesty's Customs and Excise agents, cut open one ingot and found nothing, and they let the shipment pass on through. But somebody was ratting them out. So the Dutch police let the English police know that there were some drugs being held in steel boxes, but by then they had gotten them out of there. And then they had a second shipment come in shortly after that, during that time of 2,000 pounds of cocaine. So this was big time cocaine dealing. When that shipment landed a couple of years later in 1992, the British coppers came down on them and they arrested this businessman, Brian Charrington, and our friend Curtis Warren. But it turned out that Charrington was a police informant, and it looked like that, maybe he set this whole deal up. The people who were his handlers were mad. It was just kind of a mess. And so they, a lot of came out about our friend Warren at that time. For example, the police would say in trial or in the court, in front of the court, that how well Warren was informed about how the customs people worked in England and in Liverpool particularly. He knew that how long the largest drill bit was that they would drill down in to check on things like ingots like that. In the end, a conservative member of parliament named Tom Devlin arranged a meeting with customs and ordered him to drop the charges against Charrington. The case was dropped, and Warren was acquitted of all charges after that without Charrington on board. Supposedly, as Curtis Warren walked out of the jail, he said to some customs agents that were standing there watching him walk out, he said, "I'm off to spend my 87 million pounds from the first shipment. You can't touch me." And it was reported a few months later, he was seen driving a 70,000 pound BMW, which was registered to Charrington, of all people. But he was driving, he had now 70,000 pounds for our American friends is what, about $150,000. Warren came back to Liverpool, started his operation up again, but there were several killings of other organized crime figures at the time, and the cops were hot on his tail, so he decided to move. And so he decided to move. 1995, Curtis Warren relocated to a villa in the Netherlands. He owned, by this time, he owned casinos in Spain, a disco in Turkey, a vineyard in Bulgaria, and land in Gambia, which is, I believe it would be Africa. He had money stashed away in Swiss bank accounts. He could have retired rich, but, greed will always get you. Greed will always get you, man. Police were still monitoring some of his contacts in the UK. They noticed that Warren never had any kind of, never called out any names, always used code words, seemed to keep everything in his mind. And later they would find out that he had a photographic memory. He had every detail, including his Swiss bank account numbers, in his mind. He never wrote anything down. He had unlimited credit line from the cartels in South America and with marijuana traffickers from Turkey and Eastern Europe. And the cops are all over him. In October 1996, they raided his villa and other property he owned in the Netherlands. He was arrested with several of his associates. They found guns and ammunition, hand grenades, 400 kilograms, which is about 900 pounds of cocaine, had about 3,300 pounds or 1,500 kilograms of marijuana or cannabis resin, had 60 more kilograms or 130 pounds of heroin, 110 pounds of ecstasy. They found in $600,000 in U.S. cash. Whole haul was estimated by the police. We cops would go in and we get all that stuff and we put drugs and money on the table for the news people to come and photograph. I've been involved in that myself. And they estimated that the whole haul was worth $125 million, which again is roughly what? $200 million, maybe $150 million. I'm not sure. It's not double. The pound is not double the dollar, but it's maybe 1.5 times more the last time I checked. 1998, our friend Curtis Warren is out on bond right now, and he's listed in the Sunday Times rich list, which I don't know what that is. You guys in England will know that he is a property developer. They think he's a property developer, and he has an estimated 40 million pounds at his disposal. Of course, some of these court cases started coming out. They took him off the Sunday Times rich list. But this guy, coming from a seaman's son, poor roots on the docks of Liverpool, became a bouncer on the Sunday Times rich list with 40 million pounds is something. Subsequently, he goes to trial in court. They want to show that he's been shipping South American cocaine to Bulgaria by now. He had this vineyard over Bulgaria, and he used that as a cover. He said that drugs were suspended in wine for onward shipping back to the Netherlands and to Liverpool in the UK. They had, by this point in time, the cops in England had captured and seized illegal goods, drugs, and wine valued at 125 million pounds. Off this case, he got 12 years in jail, and that's in the Netherlands. They found, as they did more forensic accounting investigation, they found 20 million pounds of his estimated 120 million pound fortune, but none of that could be legally touched. And they only found the 20 million pounds. Now, when he's in the penitentiary from this last case in 1999, he had a fight in a prison yard with a Turkish national named Simal Gusli. This dude was in the Dutch prison for a 20-year sentence for murder and attempted murder. I'm not sure what that was about. There's a lot more to that story, I'm sure. It said that as Gallucci walked toward him and tried to punch him in the face, Curtis Warren parried it. He was an old bouncer and a street fighter. Had a short fight. Gallucci fell to the ground and Warren started kicking him. You get a guy down, and a deal like that in a penitentiary, it's kill or be killed sometimes. And he kicked him in the head 4 times. He got up. Warren knocked him down again, knocked him down so hard he hit his head also, and he was unconscious. And he kicked him some more, and he never recovered from it, and he died in the hospital. Now, then they tried him for that fight while he was in the penitentiary, and his defense, of course, was self-defense. Ended up finding him guilty of manslaughter, and because the judge would say the defendant used excessive violence, he sentenced him to another 4 years. Supposed to get out in 2014. In 2002, while the Dutch police are investigating a Bulgarian shipment that's connected to Warren's operation, they got an asset seizure order against him to get more money from him and more goods. They could only find 180,000 pounds, but they charged him to repay 26 million guilders. This is in the Netherlands, which is about $14 million under their Proceeds of Crime Act. Or he gets an added 5 years in penitentiary, which would extend his release date to 2019. He ended up making a deal with the Dutch cops and paid them $8 million in order to not get 5 more years in prison. I've seen that a lot here in the United States. If you got a big time dealer and you got all these variety of charges on them, by the time you actually charge them, if they will not resist any of your forfeiture and show you where assets are that you haven't found, and especially cash, but property too, and go along with a seizure, then they can basically buy a reduced sentence. And that's happened many, many times over the years. But even while he's in jail, the Dutch authorities charge him with running an international drug smuggling cartel from his prison cell. He was moved around many times during this time, supposedly for his own safety. I think they're probably trying to, anytime you move a guy, you get to go through his cell and upset him and throw him in with other people. You're more likely to find out information on him. So I'm not sure exactly. More than likely, that was probably the cops doing that, not really for his safety. Ended up getting a guilty conviction on that, appealed it, and ended up getting released from prison in June 2007. The British, he's in the Netherlands. The British won't give him a passport. The Irish and the Portuguese won't give him a passport, where he tried. They called him the United Kingdom. They have a serious organized crime agency, and they labeled him a lifetime offender and put him in a lifetime offender management program. And they used the code name Operation Floss on him, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. During that time, his former right-hand man, a guy named Colin Smith, is shot dead while he's leaving the gym. Operation Floss is going, and they're going after him again. So he's still operating, even though he's been in jail all this time. The Serious Organized Crime Agency calls the Jersey police and informed them that Warren had arrived at Manchester, England airport, and he paid cash for his plane ticket. So they started following him. And while he was there, he was with a known Liverpool criminal associate named Taffin Carter. And he now lives in Jersey. And I have to assume that must be the island of Jersey. Drove around various locations in Jersey. So Jersey is an island out in the English Channel. So after he was seen in Jersey, the Jersey police started an operation on Warren and anybody that he was seen with while he was there, because they sell drugs in Jersey too. They set up bugging devices, telephones, and on this guy that he was seen with, a guy named Taffin Carter, on Taffin Carter's girlfriend. During this time, they learned that another friend of Curtis Warren's, a guy named John Welsh, was traveling from Jersey to Amsterdam, and they followed him there, and he met a Moroccan named Mohammed Lizid. Jersey police tried to bug Welsh's car while he was there, and they couldn't get permission, and bugged the car anyway, and then just figured they'd deal with it in court later on. In the subsequent operations, the Special Organized Crime Task Force monitored Warren back in Liverpool, and the Dutch monitored this Mohammed Lizad in Amsterdam. Started finding different phones they were using and threw taps on those. They also found out that Warren had 3 British and 1 Jersey mobile phones, and he'd made as many as 1,500 telephone calls in 3 weeks between there and telephone call boxes, payphones, northwest of England and Wales, Liverpool, Manchester, Chester, and these were all to Lizad. 2007, he's arrested again over a conspiracy to smuggle drugs after a joint investigation between the Jersey police, the Merseyside police, the Special Operations Group, and Belgium, French, and Dutch police. Pled not guilty. After that, there was a 2-year legal argument over the bugging of this John Welsh's car. Finally, they ended up offering him a deal. Plead guilty to an 8-year jail term. There'll be no confiscation of assets, but he turned that down. He was going to go for it. In the end, he was found guilty for conspiracy to smuggle marijuana, and he got 13 years in prison for that plot. The Jersey police are looking into his wealth with the aim of confiscating his gains again. You know, I tell you what, we did that a lot here. You pick out a guy that had a $70,000 car and say, let's go get that car. I remember we had a guy that had a classic restored 55 Chevy pickup that was beautiful. And one of my guys, he said, we got to go after that guy. We got to get that truck. We'd look pretty good driving that around. Of course, you couldn't really use that as an undercover car or anything. But this is a pretty common thing. It's one of the complaints that people have about the police and this civil forfeiture thing is taking drug dealers, because you end up choosing your targets more from what you can get out of them than maybe what would be more successful in interrupting the flow of drugs. And you might miss some other people that I know guys. I knew one guy that he wasn't a drug dealer, but he had another operation going, stolen cars, and it was a pretty good size operation. And he intentionally wore overalls around. He did go to strip clubs, but he kind of liked that life. He had a lot of contacts. Other people would steal cars for him and help him out with his stolen car operation. When he was in town, he would drive and go around these clubs, or anytime he was in Kansas City, where he was based out of, he would drive an old crappy car. But when we went out of town, I got to know him, and he told me once that he'd always rent like a Rolls Royce when he'd go out to Vegas, or he'd go out to LA in Southern California and the party and get away from people. Why he'd like rent, do everything, the top end and everything. They get done. They are moving on him again to confiscate his drugs. He's got this sentence, but then he appeals it, and he appeals it again. He's ended up ordered to pay 198 million pounds from a confiscation order, or get another 10 years in jail. I tell you what, he lost his appeal over his failure to order that or pay that order. And he's still in prison today. Matter of fact, his most recent crime, this guy is a player, man. His most recent crime was he was charged with having sexual contact with a female prison guard. So for you English guys and Kevin Cantet, that's the story of one of your bigger drug dealers out of Liverpool, England, Curtis Warren. Thanks, folks.